I'm blessed today because out of all the talks I've ever given, today's the first time that I get a chance to share the main stage with my daughter, Nicole. We're going to share a little bit of our life together in 25 minutes. And what's cool about her is the first words I spoke to her when she was placed into my hands is, how can anybody not believe there's a God? She is now known in our family as Dr. Nikki. She is a veterinarian in McAllen, Texas, and is having massive impact in that city. So please welcome the better part of my life, Nicole.
I remember waffles. I was 11. It was the first day of summer vacation. Waffles were a Saturday morning tradition in our family. I remember waking up, running down the stairs, wearing one of my dad's Hanes undershirts, which was a huge nightgown on me. I ran into the kitchen and I sat at my spot at the table. I remembered the way the kitchen was filled with sunlight. It was the kitchen that my mom, my dad, and I had spent months dreaming up together, with the marble floors, the sparkling counters, the bright white cabinets. I don't remember how they told me. I just remember they did. I was losing my little family. They say children of divorce, we blame ourselves. If only I was good enough, if only I hadn't made them mad. But me, I knew who was to blame. It was my dad. Mom, she was always there. She made me breakfast every morning. She drove me to school. She made little heart-shaped sandwiches for lunch. She'd write me sweet little love notes and stick them in my lunchbox so I could read them every day. I mean, for years, we read Harry Potter before bed every night. And Dad? Well, he worked. The divorce was hard. It was really hard. I remember one day I was walking up the stairs and I could hear my mom crying in her room. The door was cracked open, so I pushed it open, the hinges creaking, and she looked up at me. She was sitting at her desk and she held her arms out and she said, "Come here, baby." And I ran into her arms and I sat there and clung to her, even though I was already 3 inches taller than her. And we cried together. And it was my dad's fault. It was my dad's fault that I had to watch the pain of my mother's heartbreak while suffering through my own.
Who was that man? That is not the father that I intended to be. Today, we're going to share a little bit of our story, and we're going to talk about the importance of purpose, the intensity that comes with proper priority, and the power, the healing grace that comes when forgiveness is given and received. Purpose, when she was this young child, I thought I had it. I remember date night. She's 6 years old. I went into the bedroom, stood in front of the mirror, put on my tie, walked out in the garage, jumped in the car, drove around to the front of the house, pulled up to the sidewalk, walked in, knocked on the door, and she comes bounding down the stairs, pigtails just flying. Door swung open, she came out, reached out, she grabbed my arm, and we walked off to the car. Went to see the little princess, gave her flowers. Her very first date. I had purpose. I knew my purpose.
You made me feel special.
How?
You made me feel like I was a priority.
Because I slowed down. I slowed down. See, we have busyness in our life, and my friends, what I need to share with you is that busyness is a choice. And the challenge we have is where purpose gets knocked off sometimes is when we deal with sort of false sense of connection. And today, technology interferes with connection. This device is trying to make us feel a society that we're connected to everybody. But what this does is it puts us in contact with people, not connection. And this professor of mine taught me that. It was one night I'm at the house around Christmas time, and my phone is there because I'm wrapping presents. And all of a sudden, my phone starts vibrating, and it's a message from Nikki.
Hey, Dad, Merry Christmas. What are you doing?
I'm wrapping presents. What are you doing?
That's cool. Can't wait to see what you got me. I'm going to the mall with Aubrey and Sarah. What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm working. You?
Boring. I think I'm just going to hang at the house. Hey, do you need new socks?
You know the question I really wanted to ask? Why don't you call me? A couple of weeks later, she's at the house for a sleepover with a couple of her friends. And I hear them in the next room, and I hear this voice talking about this amazing conversation that she had with her dad a couple of weeks before then. And I couldn't remember what she was referring to. And then she starts talking about this interchange with this. And I'm going, this makes us connected? Until we talked about this a few years later. And what we realized, it wasn't the device that was connecting us. It wasn't the interchange this way. It was the memorable moments that we create in between the time the texting that's going out. It's when we look into the eyes, when we interact heart to heart, makes this thing have relevance. Without the eyes, without the heart, this becomes something that as parents we sometimes hide behind. And sometimes we send the wrong message to our children because we're spending time with this when we should be spending time with them. It's creating those memorable moments that are critical so that we're connecting heart to heart. The challenge we run into is that busyness is a choice. And what happens is we have to answer the question, where do we lose purpose? It's when our priorities are misaligned. Nikki's already shared with you that I had a sense of priority early, that I, at 23 years old, was on a rocket ship. I was a man on fire. At 23 years old, I was working for a company running the highest producing business unit in the executive search firm that I worked for. I had 16 people reporting to me. I was on fire. And then what happened one day, I jump on an airplane and I fly to San Francisco for a meeting. And about halfway there, I wake up from a nap and my chest is just thumping. My heart is beating 100 miles an hour and I cannot figure out what's going on. I jump out of my chair and I'm walking back and forth up and down the aisle with only one thought in my mind: I have got to get off this airplane. Now, I'm from Louisiana. Thank you very much. And you know, I learned something that day. Planes are not designed to get off of at 34,000 feet. I came home. 2 weeks later, I'm going to the top of the 50th floor of One Shell Plaza, and when the elevator was open, the floor is shifting. 2 weeks after that, I'm driving to New Orleans for a meeting, and I'm driving across the causeway, and it's a 26-mile causeway with concrete buried into the ground, and the bridge is swinging. At least that's what I saw. I thought I was losing my mind. Doctors diagnosed that I was having massive panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Didn't make any sense to me, but I got medication, I got counseling, and I got to a stage where I started thinking that I'm going to work my way through this. I'm going to throw myself more into my work. And that's how I'm going to get my handle on this. That's where I'm going to get my sense of self-worth. I ended up meeting her mom. I got married. That's where I'm going to get my sense of self-worth. 5 years later, I was given a gift of Nikki in my life. Now, I have a sense of self-worth. And unfortunately, none of that filled the hole. And one day, I woke up sitting on the corner of a bed in an apartment, divorced. And I had failed at the two most important responsibilities a man could have. I'd failed as a husband, and I failed as a father. Three years later, I decided it was time for another date night. Nikki's 14 years old, and we decide we're going to go off together on a trip to Northern California, because I saw this brochure about this ranch that had like horseback riding, it's a little river rafting, mountains, pine trees, going to go hiking. I said, this will be great. Well, I didn't realize until we got there that we had signed up to spend 1 week on high ropes courses. Not something that's really good for somebody who suffers with panic attacks. All week long, we kept hearing about this thing called the 757. It's a 50-foot telephone pole with a 14-inch by 14-inch plate sitting on top, and your job is to go over, climb the pole, pull yourself up on top of this plate, and jump off and catch a trapeze that is 7 feet above your head and 7 feet in front of you, hence the name 757. She and I had been talking about this all week long, agonizing about this thing. How are we going to deal with this? So we're standing there the last day, and we're looking up at the pole.
Daddy,
Yeah?
can I go first?
That's a great idea. She scampered over the pole like a little squirrel. She just climbed her way up the top, grabbed that plate, pulled herself on top. She jumped, and she just barely missed the trapeze.
It's hard. You're 6'4".
Yes, I know. The pole's 50 feet tall. What's the difference? Okay, so she's swinging in the air, and she got down. When she finished, the little guy holding the safety cable looked at her and says, you want to come down now? She goes, no, sir, I'm not coming down until I make it. She pulls herself over, climbs on top on the third try. She grabbed the trapeze. Now it's my turn. And I did something for the very first time in my life. I stepped back, and I looked at the pole, and these words came out of my mouth. I can do all things in your name. I can do all things in your name. And I started walking to the pole, and I started climbing. And I'm halfway up the pole, and the back spasms that I'd been having for 2 days, because I was not 14 years old, and I'm climbing up. About halfway up, the back spasms disappear. I can do all things in your name. And now I'm hanging on to this 14-inch plate on the top of a 50-foot pole. And all the dads and daughters that have been cheering us on and affirming all week long, there's this commotion that's coming upon as I'm hanging on this plate going, how in the world am I going to pull myself up there? Out of this whole den, I hear this little voice.
You can do it, Daddy. You can do it.
And the next thing you know, I'm standing on top of a 50-foot pole on a 14-inch plate with only one thought in my mind. Why would anybody want to jump off such a good pole? but I did. I jumped and I grabbed the trapeze. And when I hit the ground, I realized two things. The first, I hadn't had a panic attack. And my friends, I have not had one since that day. And the other is Nikki's voice was used by God to heal me. I came back home. I was on fire. I needed to get into this book called the Bible. I knew there was an old part. I knew there was a new part. I needed to get in there. And I went to College of Biblical Studies and started taking courses. I took a 20-week course in our church on what it was like to be a biblical man. And I called my coach, my cabin coach, Dwayne, and I said, 6 months later, I said, Dwayne, I haven't come down. What's going on? And he laughed. He said, go look up at the word transformation. You have been transformed.
There was something different about him. Growing up, I remember going to church on Sundays and praying over dinner, but that was kind of it. We never talked about what faith was supposed to look like. We kind of lived that family that Rob talked about last night. We didn't have that family worship at home. Now, after the ranch, Dad was spending time in the Word every morning out on the back porch. He was praying for me before big exams at school. He was going to men's Bible studies and sharing with me what he learned. He was transformed. And I was still hurting. Our parents are supposed to protect us. He was supposed to protect me. His transformation didn't undo my suffering. I was hurt. I was angry. But I still wanted a relationship with him. That's how God made us to be. He made us to be his children, to yearn to know him as our heavenly Father. Even though my dad hurt me, I still wanted a relationship with him. I wanted to spend time with him. I wanted him to know that he was proud of me, to feel loved by him. I'm a people pleaser by nature. I wanted my dad to be happy. I knew that if I pulled away, I would hurt him as much as he hurt me. Tempting as it was at times, I'm sure I made some of those decisions that hurt him. Deep down, I knew that wasn't fair. And I was blessed. I have a mom who had a great relationship with her dad. And even in her hurting, she knew that in order to be all that I could be, to be the godly woman that she knew I would be, I needed to have a relationship with my dad. So, I tried to move past the hurt. Over the next few years, we tried to rebuild our relationship. It was precarious. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't always pretty. But anything in life takes time. One of my favorite medical expressions when talking about treating illness or disease is the tincture of time. Forgiveness and healing take time. So, flash forward a few years. It's my junior year of college, and I now have the opportunity to go back to the JH Ranch as one of the college summer staff. I worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, for free. Yes, for free. And my life changed. It was easily the best summer of my life. I gained this closeness to God that I'd never felt before. I had this immense peace. I was writing letters to home one day, and I had to walk down to the front desk where the staff mailbox lived. One of the letters was to my dad. And as I got down to the front desk, my friend Mary Kate was working. And it was a slow night, so we got to chatting. She noticed that my letter on top was to my dad. So she said, "Tell me about him." And I did. I started to tell her stories about date night and teaching me how to swim, being my chauffeur to freshman homecoming. I like to talk a lot, so it wasn't hard. As I am talking about my dad, the divorce came up, as it always did. And I tried something new. I didn't try to avoid the hurt that I felt. I didn't hide the pain that I'd been through for all those years. And Mary Kate, well, she just got all fired up. She said all of the things she would have done in my position. She said, I just don't get it. How can you have a relationship with him? It was one of those aha moments. I'm standing there in the middle of the mountains and trees of Northern California, and the last 7 years of my life flash by, and I think, because I forgave him. Over the years, I had somehow come to experience these words that I once read. Forgiveness is a decision, not an emotion. You will never wake up one day and feel forgiveness for someone. It's a daily struggle. Every day you wake up, you have to choose to forgive the people that hurt you. I had a lot of friends growing up that never wanted a relationship with their dad. They thought the hurt was too big, their dad didn't deserve it, self-preservation, I don't know. We all have our reasons. But despite all the hurt my dad caused me, I still wanted to have a relationship with him.
In order to have connection, all of us, every person in this room, has stuff, has baggage that we carry. We carry through life. Scriptures tells us, though, with contrition, it's forgiven east is from the west. It just is. There are people who have hurt everyone in this room. In order for us to have connection, it's our responsibility to step into that pain and to offer forgiveness. You see, you got to live a life of purpose. You have to make sure your priorities are intact and are where they need to be as far as the importance of the people that are placed in your life. And you got to let go. You can't live in the past. You have to live today. And when you do that, you have an opportunity to work your way through and be connected, and we need that right now in the church. We need that right now in our families. Connection is the most important priority that we have. And it's a decision that we make about dealing with pain, about dealing with busyness, and about where our purpose is each and every day. You know, Nikki, I have a question for you.
What's that, Dad?
What have I done to make you feel that we're connected?
I think it's the little things. Teaching me how to swim, teaching me how to ride a bike, driving me to freshman homecoming. It wasn't anything big.
We didn't rehearse this. You know, when you just said that, what hit me is the importance of being present, not physically, emotionally. It's the times that I chose to be present with you emotionally is, I think, where the strongest sense of connection comes from. And you know where have I done something to make you feel connected to me? It's those things. You know what you've done to make me feel connected to you? Office supplies.
Dad, you mean the sticky note?
Yeah, sticky note. Good news it's not there, but
That's okay, we took a picture.
it's there. That's a 15-year-old sticky note. Was put on my steering wheel one morning when I came out to go to work. And I kept that. And it's stuck there. I didn't bring it with me. I didn't lose it. That's just a piece of paper I was making because I didn't lose that thing. It's precious. It's a time whenever you see what happens is we think it's these big grandiose things that we've got to do to make connection within our family. It's not. It's the little things that we do. It's the little things that we do. And so as we close this thing up, It's important for us to have purpose. It's important for us to have priority. It's important for us to let go of the past so that we can truly connect with people heart to heart.